Ten more Mean Streets of Gadgetzan cards revealed, and some of these are pretty exciting. So the Daring Reporter is always, at the very least, a 4/4. Azure Drake is a very popular card right now, as a lot of people have pointed out, so suppose you're going second, you just play the Daring Reporter on turn 4, you play it into the turn that they're most likely going to play Azure Drake, they draw another card, Daring Reporters are 5/5, that's really good. So it's cool in the idea that it'll make your opponent play differently. It's also cool in combination with other cards like Natural Eyes or Cold Light Oracle. Realistically, probably not going to see play. Mill decks don't really want to get minions. This card could have been played as a 4-mana 3/4. No, that would just be power creep over Yeti. But is it okay for it to be power crept over Yeti? They probably tried it out as a 3/4. So that's the concept of one stat of a difference. And that's going to lead into the next card where one stat is going to be pretty important. Virmen Sensei. A lot of people just looked at this card and immediately dismissed it because, well, Menagerie Magician didn't see any play. How can Virmen Sensei see any play? You have that perspective, but then what if I told you a 5-mana 6/7 is really good? That one extra stat puts it over the 5-mana 6/6 of the Menagerie Magician, and 5 health is quite a bit better than 4 health. I don't think the card is as bad as a lot of people give it flack for. Now, yes, quite a bit of the problem with this deck, with this card, is that the Beast deck generally has a lot of 5-drops. So yes, unfortunately, people are probably right. It's not absolute trash, okay? Jade Behemoth. So, painting the picture. 1, Dark Arakoa is played. 2, Dark Arakoa only has 2/1 more stats. That means if your Jade Golem is just a 2/2, you're getting more stat value than Dark Arakoa. It doesn't quite work that way. Dark Arakoa happens to be statted really well. Anyways, the point is, the Jade Golem, all it really has to do is like be a 2/2, and I think it would be a fine card. Really, you don't even have to evaluate this card. It's just the question of, will this make the cut in a Jade Golem deck? One big consideration to make is that this card contests Aya Blackpaw, and Aya Blackpaw is like the go-to 6-drop for Jade Golem decks. So the question is, do you need any more 6-drops on top of Aya? Maybe you want Wind Jade Behemoth, maybe you want to, maybe Jade Golems are that good that you just put in all the Jade Golem cards. I'm going to reserve judgment on this card until I see all the Jade Golem cards, because then you can actually get around to putting the deck together and seeing which Jade Golem cards are the best and which ones you would put into the deck. This card seems promising, I'll say that much. Gadgetzan Ferryman. It's a card that many people have made fun of because, haha, rogue! So it is Brewmaster, but it doesn't always return a friendly minion to your hand, you have to combo it. Now, before you say that's like worse than Brewmaster, there are some times where you wouldn't want to play Brewmaster because you wouldn't want to return a friendly minion to your hand, and that's what Gadgetzan Ferryman allows you to do, and I think that's a cool mechanic. There is some design space there. It's kind of cool. Sometimes you don't want to return a friendly minion. Great. And before we like rip on this card, there's the theory that if you add in more brew effects, like yes, you already had Youthful Brewmaster, yes, you already had Shadow Step, yes, you already had Ancient Brewmaster, but Ancient Brewmaster doesn't really count because it costs too much. If you add in another effect at a low cost, then perhaps the deck becomes more viable. And yes, with like Jade Golems being in play, returning friendly minions to your hand and then resummoning them makes a decent amount of sense. An example of this is when Onyx Bishop was printed. It made Resurrect viable because you put in enough Resurrect effects into a deck that you could finally justify running cards that would want to get resurrected, like Injured Blade Master. Similar to this, that's the theory. I don't think it'll happen yet with the cards that we've seen. But we haven't seen that many rogue cards, to be fair. But it is looking like it is complete trash. Shadow Sensei is a really interesting, different, and kind of a class-defining card for Rogue, actually. So Rogues are going to try to become more stealthy. This card is way better than Houndmaster. Like, instead of giving a Beast +2/+2, you're giving a Stealth Minion +2/+2. So if stealth minions are in the game, then Shadow Sensei is great. This card completely follows the curve of Shaku the Collector. You play your 3 mana 2/3, Shaku, and then you follow it up with Shadow Sensei, and then Shaku is attacking as a Yeti. Wow. And then Shaku might actually survive to attack again. Will a stealth deck be good? That depends a lot on the value of the stealth minions, so we'll see. Coming up next, an actual really good rogue card. Finally, they're getting a weapon, and it summons Jade Golems. Just kidding, it's a Shaman card. 2 mana, 2/2, Overload 1, very reminiscent of Stormforged Axe. So instead of 1 durability, you have summon a Jade Golem, and that's actually pretty strong. So we go back into the how good is a Jade Golem theory. I keep putting it off saying, okay, I don't know yet, you don't know, but I'm going to vaguely call a Jade Golem like a 3/3 on average. Which is to say, I think throughout the course of a game, if you're playing a Jade Golem deck, I anticipate that you'll summon a 1/1, a 2/2, a 3/3, a 4/4, and a 5/5. That's my guess. It's not a really good card if you summon only a 1/1, I'll grant you that. But when I think about the average Jade Golem, then I can think of this as like a 2 mana 3/3, Overload 1, and that's like Totem Golem. And you get a 2/2 weapon with it. So if I go with that very optimistic way of thinking, this card seems like it has potential. Call in the finishers. This card does combo with Every Fin is Awesome, but the main problem with that is that if you play it with Every Fin is Awesome, you're probably going to play it on like turn 6 or 7. Plus we know a lot of classes right now can deal 1 to everything, like Ravaging Ghoul and Maelstrom Portal. If you play it with Murloc Warleader, you are getting a lot of value. That's a 12/8 for 4 if you have a Murloc Warleader out. But they'll probably kill your Murloc Warleader. So, long story short, seems bad, but has that glimmer of potential. Jinyu Waterspeaker. This card's really interesting. 4 mana, 3/6, Overload 1, battle card restore 6 health. Very reminiscent of the Antique Healbot. So this one just kind of outclasses Healbot, actually. Very cool that it pushes Shamans in another direction. Antique Healbot was kind of phased out of neutral because they wanted to make sure not every class could heal. So it looks like Shamans get a good one. And Jinyu Waterspeaker certainly seems like a much better healing wave, in that it also gets you a 3/6. Might even make the cut in mid-range Shaman, especially since they don't have 4 mana cards. Might even be good with a 4 mana 7/7, because then you can restore the 6 health on your 4 mana 7/7. We've got Jade Chieftain. So 7 mana 5/5, summon a Jade Golem, Battlecry, give it Taunt. It's 1 mana more than the Faceless Summoner, but you're getting a guaranteed Jade Golem instead of a random 3-drop. This card is a really heavy mana cost, so you probably are playing this near the end-ish of a game. Which means your Jade Golem would probably be expected to be a 3/3 or a 4/4 at this point. And also really good that the Jade Golem has Taunt. That's probably an understated part, but at 7 mana you are at the point where you might just be dying to aggro, but getting a 5/5 with Taunt down on that turn, that could swing things. It would be a big block. And it definitely puts it in a different direction than mid-range Shaman. And finally, I left the best for last. The Shaman Legendary revealed of White Eyes. 5 mana 5/5 Taunt. That's not too bad by itself. So how good is the Storm Guardian? Well, it turns out the Storm Guardian is pretty good. 5 mana 10/10 Taunt. Wow. Now, here's an interesting thing to think about, though, and why this card might not be as insane as it looks, because I will say it looks insane. A deck of Hearthstone has 30 cards. That means, on average, you're going to draw a card that you don't keep in your hand, not even at the halfway point of 15. You're going to draw it a little bit later, because you won't keep White Eyes in your hand. Well, establish that much. You don't keep a 5 mana 5/5 Taunt in your opening hand. So you expect this to be, on average, the 16th card of your deck. And then you shuffle the Storm Guardian, and it'll, on average, go into the halfway point of that, which is the 8th card from the bottom. So that would mean, on average, you'd need to have your games go to like drawing and then having about 8 cards left in your deck, 7 cards left, to actually play the Storm Guardian. Now, averages don't always happen. Storm Guardian can be in the last card. Maybe you just draw the Storm Guardian immediately after. But that's just to illustrate that it's not that insane. Maybe it doesn't fit into mid-range Shaman. Like, I'm trying to take the contrarian approach when I lead into these cards, you might have noticed. Like, I talked up the 2-mana, 2/3 combo rogue card. That is to say, on average, maybe you don't even get the Storm Guardian, and you only get a 5-mana, 5/5 taunt. And it's not that good, but the scary thing is it's not that bad. 5-mana, 5/5 taunt, it's a competitive stat line. Like, if a 5-mana, 5/5 taunt card were printed in neutral, we'd look at it and be like, it's a little bit less good than Pit Fighter in terms of stats, but it's taunt. Taunt probably makes up for 1 health. Card's like completely reasonable. Cool neutral minion. But this is a big upside. Shuffle a Storm Guardian, 5-mana, 10/10 taunt. That's a good card. So I conclude this card's good. I even think it might be good enough to just stick into mid-range Shaman. Because as mid-range Shaman, you do get into games where you draw a decent amount of cards. You can play this card on 5 mana. You can immediately draw the Storm Guardian the turn after, and then like completely blow out your opponent. You can Barnes out Wide Eyes, and then you can play the Storm Guardian on turn 5. That would be pretty gross. So this seems to be a very powerful card. Exactly the class that Ian we're loving.